The wind screamed across the open plains like a living thing, carrying sheets of snow that swallowed the world beyond a few yards. Inside the large ranch house, warmth filled every corner except the one where Hannah sat alone. Her swollen belly stretched beneath her worn dress, a constant reminder that she carried not one child, but 3. The local doctor had confirmed it months ago, shaking his head in disbelief and warning her that the pregnancy would be difficult. Since her husband Jacob's death, everything had changed. The house that once echoed with laughter had become a place of cold stares and whispered conversations. Jacob's brother, Vernon, now controlled the ranch. He walked through the halls as though he owned them, though legally the property belonged to Hannah and the children she carried. She knew Vernon hated that fact. At the supper table that evening, silence hung in the air. Vernon sat at the head of the table while his wife Clara and 2 grown sons ate without speaking. Hannah carefully spooned a little stew into her bowl. "You eat like you are feeding an army," Clara muttered. Hannah lowered her eyes. "I'm eating for my babies." Clara laughed harshly. "Babies. 3 of them. That's all we hear about." Vernon slammed his cup onto the table. "And who's supposed to pay for them?" The room fell silent. Hannah stared at him. "They're Jacob's children. Jacob's dead." The words struck harder than a slap. Vernon leaned forward. "Your husband left this ranch buried in debt." "That's not true." "It is now." His sons smirked. Hannah felt fear tighten in her chest. She had heard them discussing papers and property for weeks. Something was happening behind closed doors. "I only want what's rightfully my children's," she said quietly. Vernon's expression darkened. "That's exactly the problem." No one spoke another word during the meal. Later that night, Hannah sat in the small bedroom she had once shared with Jacob. She held one of his old shirts against her face, trying to remember his scent. A tear rolled down her cheek. She missed him every day. Jacob had been strong and kind, a man respected throughout the territory. 6 months earlier, a horse had thrown him against a rocky hillside during a cattle drive. He never regained consciousness. Since then, Hannah had been fighting a battle she never expected. A sudden knock rattled the door. Before she could answer, Vernon entered. 2 of his sons followed. The sight immediately filled her with dread. "What do you want?" she asked. Vernon crossed his arms. "You need to leave." She stared at him. "What?" "You heard me. This is my home." "Not anymore." Hannah slowly rose from the bed. "You have no right." "I have every right." He pulled folded papers from his coat. "Ownership transferred." She looked at the documents. Her heart sunk. Jacob's signature appeared on them. But something was wrong. The handwriting looked strange. "Uneven. Forged." "You forged those," she whispered. Vernon's eyes narrowed. "Careful. You forged them." One of his sons stepped forward threateningly. The room suddenly felt much smaller. Fear crept through her body. "You can't throw me out," she said. "I'm carrying Jacob's children." Vernon shrugged. "Not my concern." Outside, thunder rumbled. The storm was growing worse. "You'd send a pregnant woman into this weather?" Clara appeared in the doorway. "Better now than after those babies arrive." The cruelty in her voice shocked Hannah. For a moment she searched their faces for mercy. She found none. These people had already made their decision. Vernon tossed a small sack onto the floor. A little food. Then he threw a blanket beside it. More than you're owed. Tears filled Hannah's eyes. This is evil. Vernon's expression remained cold. No. This is business. The next few minutes passed like a nightmare. She gathered what little she could carry. A photograph of Jacob. An extra dress. A Bible that had belonged to her mother. Nothing else. The rest of her life remained behind. When she reached the front door, she turned back one final time. This had been her home. The place where she and Jacob had dreamed about raising a family. Now strangers stood inside it. People willing to abandon her and 3 unborn children to die. Vernon opened the door. The storm exploded into the house. Snow swirled across the floor. The freezing wind cut through her clothing instantly. Go, he said. Hannah didn't move. One of the sons grabbed her arm. Pain shot through her shoulder. Leave. They pushed her onto the porch. She stumbled, nearly falling. The door slammed behind her. The sound echoed through the storm. For several seconds she simply stood there. Alone. Homeless. Pregnant. Terrified. Then she heard the lock click. They weren't changing their minds. Hannah pulled the blanket around herself and began walking. Snow reached her ankles. Every step required effort. Her back ached. The weight of the triplets made movement difficult even on good days. Tonight it felt impossible. Hours passed. The ranch disappeared behind the curtain of snow. Darkness swallowed the land. The temperature continued dropping. Her hands became numb. Her feet burned with cold. Several times she nearly collapsed. But each time she placed both hands on her belly. My babies, she whispered. The words gave her strength. She would not quit. She would not let them die. Near midnight she spotted a rocky outcrop rising from the frozen landscape. With the last of her energy, she climbed toward it. Beneath the rocks she found a shallow overhang that offered some protection from the wind. It wasn't much. But it was enough. She wrapped herself tightly in the blanket and curled against the stone. The babies shifted inside her. A small reminder that they were still fighting with her. Tears rolled silently down her face. Above her, snow fell endlessly from the black sky. In the distance, the haunting howl of wolves drifted across the wilderness. Hannah closed her eyes and pressed a trembling hand against her belly. Please, Lord, she whispered into the darkness. Help us survive the night. Far away, unseen through the storm, the faint sound of approaching horse hooves echoed across the frozen plains. The sound of horse hooves grew louder through the storm, though Hannah was too exhausted to hear it clearly. Curled beneath the rocky overhang, she drifted between sleep and unconsciousness. The cold had settled deep into her bones. Her fingers no longer felt like part of her body, and every breath seemed weaker than the last. The babies shifted inside her. That movement was the only thing keeping her connected to life. Somewhere beyond the curtain of snow, a horse snorted. Then came the crunch of boots. A shadow appeared through the storm. The man leading the horse almost walked past before noticing the shape beneath the rocks. He stopped. For several seconds he simply stared. A woman. Alone. in weather that could kill a healthy man within hours. He moved closer. "Ma'am." No response. He knelt beside her. The lantern in his hand illuminated her pale face. His jaw tightened. She was barely conscious. Then he noticed her swollen belly. Not just pregnant. Very pregnant. Damn. Hannah's eyelids fluttered. She could barely make out the figure before her. A tall man wearing a dark duster coat and a black hat dusted with snow. His face was rough and weathered, marked by old scars. He looked dangerous. The kind of man respectable people crossed the street to avoid. "Please," she whispered. The word barely escaped her lips. The stranger glanced at the stone. Then back at her. His expression hardened as if fighting an internal battle. Finally he sighed. "Looks like I'm not riding alone tonight." Carefully, he lifted her into his arms. Hannah cried out weakly as pain shot through her back. "Easy," he said. "You're safe." Safe. It was the first comforting word she had heard in months. He wrapped an extra blanket around her and carried her to his horse. Within minutes they were moving through the darkness. The journey felt endless. Hannah faded in and out of awareness. Each time she opened her eyes, the stranger remained there guiding the horse through the snow. Hours later, a cabin emerged among towering pine trees. It sat hidden deep in the mountains where few people traveled. Warm light glowed from a window. The man quickly brought her inside. Heat from a stone fireplace filled the room. The sudden warmth stung Hannah's frozen skin. The stranger laid her on a bed covered with thick blankets. He removed his gloves and checked her pulse. Still weak, but alive. He immediately began heating water. For the rest of the night he worked without rest. By morning Hannah remained unconscious. The stranger sat beside the fire drinking black coffee. His eyes occasionally drifted toward the bed. He wasn't accustomed to company. For years he had lived alone. It was safer that way. People brought questions. Questions brought trouble. Trouble had followed him long enough. Late that afternoon Hannah finally opened her eyes. The cabin ceiling came into focus. For a moment she thought she was dreaming. Then she saw the stranger sitting nearby. Instinctively she tensed. "Where am I?" "Cabin." His answer was short. "Whose cabin?" "Mine." Fear flickered across her face. The stranger noticed. "If I meant you harm, you'd already know it." Hannah studied him carefully. He didn't seem cruel. Just guarded. Like a man carrying a heavy burden. "Thank you," she said quietly. He nodded once. "What happened to you?" The question brought painful memories flooding back. She looked away. "My husband's family threw me out." His eyes narrowed. "In that storm?" "Yes." Silence filled the room. The stranger stared into the fire. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a dangerous edge. "That's a cruel thing to do." Hannah gave a sad laugh. "They wanted the ranch." The stranger said nothing. But his jaw tightened. Over the following days Hannah slowly recovered. The storm eventually passed, revealing endless mountains covered in fresh snow. The cabin remained isolated from the rest of the world. At first their conversations were brief. The stranger seemed uncomfortable talking about himself. Yet he always made sure she had food. He chopped extra firewood. He checked on her constantly. Despite his rough appearance, his actions revealed kindness. One evening Hannah sat near the fireplace while the stranger repaired a saddle. "You have a name?" she asked. He glanced up. "Cole." She smiled faintly. "I'm Hannah." "I know." She frowned. "How? You talked in your sleep." For the first time, a small smile appeared on his face. It vanished quickly. But Hannah noticed it. As the days passed, she learned more about him. Not because he volunteered information. Because little details slipped through the cracks. He handled a gun like someone who had spent years using one. He never sat with his back to a door. Every few hours he checked the woods outside. Always watching. Always alert. One night Hannah finally asked, "Who are you hiding from?" Cole stopped sharpening his knife. The room became silent. For several moments he didn't answer. Then he stared into the flames. "Most people think I'm a criminal." Hannah waited. "They say I robbed a bank." "Did you?" "No." The answer came immediately. Without hesitation. Without doubt. "I was blamed for something another man did." His eyes darkened. Nobody cared about the truth. Hannah believed him. Perhaps because she understood what it felt like to be powerless. To have others decide your fate. "You've been running ever since." Cole nodded. 5 years. The number stunned her. 5 years of hiding. 5 years without a home. Without peace. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees. For a moment neither spoke. Then a distant sound echoed through the mountains. A horse. Cole instantly stood. His hand moved toward his rifle. The relaxed atmosphere vanished. Hannah saw the change immediately. The hunter had returned. Cole stepped to the window. Far below, several riders moved through the snow-covered valley. Too far away to identify. But close enough to worry him. His expression grew grim. Because something told him those men weren't searching for him. They were searching for Hannah. Cole watched the riders through the cabin window until they disappeared behind a line of snow-covered trees. His instincts told him trouble had finally found them. Behind him, Hannah sat near the fireplace, one hand resting on her swollen belly. "Who are they?" she asked. "I don't know yet." "But you think they're dangerous?" Cole didn't answer immediately. Years of surviving on the run had taught him to trust his instincts. And right now every instinct screamed that those men meant harm. For the next 2 days he remained alert. His rifle stayed within reach. Each morning he checked the surrounding hills for tracks. On the third day he found them. Fresh horse prints.